One day a lawyer was riding down the road in a limousine when he saw two men on the side of the road eating grass. Bewildered by the sight, he just had to stop. And his driver pulled over and the lawyer called out the window, "Hey, why are you guys eating grass?" "We're very poor," one of them said, "and we have nothing to eat, so we're eating grass on the side of the road to stay alive." The lawyer was aghast. "That's terrible," he said. "You jump in this limousine and I'll take you to my house to eat." "That's great, sir," the man replied, "but I have a wife and 3 children. I can't leave them behind." "Well, bring them along and bring your friend too." The man was amazed and grateful. The second man said, "I have a family too, sir, and I have 4 children. Bring them all," the lawyer said. "We'll fit them in the limo." The men were amazed and they rushed home to get their families. "You won't believe it," they told their wives. "We found a kind lawyer." And they returned and they all crammed into the large limousine. The men were profuse with praise. "I can't believe you're doing this for us," they said. "It's no problem," the lawyer replied. "You're going to love my house. We've been on vacation and the grass is over a foot tall." It is safe to assume all of us in this room understand that taking neighbors in need in a limo to mow our grass by eating it is not what it means to love your neighbor in need, or more to the point of today's lectionary text from Romans, that do no harm to a neighbor. And I'd argue that is the heart of the humor in the story that I just told. Yes, it's nonsensical, but what makes it especially nonsensical is that the lawyer's conduct not only fails to tend to the neighbor's need for food and adds to their harm, but tends to his own need, all the while acting like he's doing a good thing. It's outrageous. And a pseudo act of kindness for someone blessed with abundance to take starving people from roadside grass eating to rich estate grass eating. It's not helpful. It's harmful. I'll leave it to me to ruin a perfectly good lawyer joke when 2 retired lawyers are standing up here to do it with a detailed analysis of its disturbing, darker side. We hear all this stuff in the media that's supposed to be about Christianity that is itself really rather disturbing. We all have to believe this or that or go to hell. The Bible is inerrant. God's goodly created homosexuals are an evil. We've got to despise all other faiths. The rich are rich because they've earned God's blessing, and the poor are poor because they haven't earned it, or worse, have earned God's curse. None of these things are teachings of Jesus. None of them. Darlene and I were talking a few weeks ago about how I've decided what I've decided to call pseudo-Christianity. Pseudo means fake, not genuine. Pretend, put on. And Christianity, according to my Westminster Dictionary of Theological Terms, means, and I'm quoting, that religion found on the life, teachings, and actions of Jesus Christ. In pseudo-Christianity, by definition, is that which is not genuinely founded on the life, teachings, or actions of Jesus Christ. And there's a whole industry out there claiming to be Christian and gospel-oriented that sure doesn't seem to be founded on any sort of Jesus Christ stuff. They tack label of Christianity onto their desired way of being and prejudices, and they weave it into what they want to do and see, and then they use religion to ignore or hurt or pummel people different from them. And frankly, and I know it sounds harsh, but such stuff is not genuine Christianity. It's not essential to the faith of God. It's not a part of Jesus' way. It's not in the Gospels. An example of this is the last thing on the list I named, that the rich are rich because they've earned God's blessing, and the poor are poor because they haven't earned it, or worse, they have earned God's curse. The very, very popular religious following these days called the prosperity gospel that pushes this non-Jesus idea, this not in the real gospel stuff about getting monetary wealth for self through Jesus. You can see it being touted on TV by evangelists like Benny Hinn and Joyce Myers and Joel and Victoria Osteen these days. But Oral Roberts and Jim Baker were pitching it back in the day, too. The movement claims it has a basis in Christianity, in Jesus' way. But if you look in the Gospels, in Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, you'll not find it there. It's a religious movement based on self-need and a creed of greed that puts on the back burner the real Gospel's teachings to tend to everyone's need. It removes from love your neighbor as yourself the your neighbor as part. It becomes just love yourself. Yet in both the Old Testament and the New Testament, the commandment is clearly love your neighbor as yourself. The prosperity gospel changes that, and it figuratively changes Jesus' teaching in the Lord's Prayer that we petition God to give us our daily bread, to be a teaching that we instead petition God to give me my daily bread. It's about self. Victoria Osteen recently preached it like this: when you come to church, when you worship Him, you're not doing it for God, really. You're doing it for yourself, because that's what makes God happy. Prosperity gospel embraces the real gospel's faithful concern for all, rewriting it as a concern for only me and mine. It becomes about doing it for yourself. Marcus Borg discusses this religious movement in his newest book that came out just a few weeks ago called Convictions. He notes that prosperity gospel claims that being a Christian leads to a prosperous life here on earth. A blatant form is inscribed over the door of a mega church with more than 20,000 members. Quote, "The Word of God is the way to wealth." End quote. The Word of God is the way to wealth. Seriously? By any objective analysis, seeking a religious way toward monetary prosperity, wealth, founded on the life, teachings, and actions of Jesus Christ, is pseudo-Christianity. Folks can believe it all they like, but it is not gospel-based. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John don't come anywhere near to mentioning it, nor does Paul, for that matter. Jesus did not live, teach, or act on a way or toward a way to material riches. Accordingly, the way of the prosperity gospel, to the extent that it claims to be Christian in the theological dictionary sort of way, is fakery. It's pseudo-Christianity. Jesus did not say the greatest commandment is love God, and the second is like it, love material wealth as yourself. The truth is, the Word of God is not the way to individual earthly wealth. What it is the heavenly way to peace on earth through love for everyone. And it's not that being rich is wrong. Please hear me clearly. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the prosperity gospel is not the way of Jesus. Being a follower of Jesus in order to get material riches completely misses the point of following Jesus. And part and parcel of this is, while being rich is not wrong, substituting the actual message of Jesus and the point of the Gospels for a religious-based personal hunt for wealth as we enter a purportedly Christ-based church door is sinful, especially when we rank it above loving our neighbors. Indeed, it is an evil, because it is an intentional movement away from where God clearly calls us. It purposefully misses the mark God aims us at. And sin means missing the mark. And the mark, as Jesus summed it up, is love of God and self and neighbor. And most of us get the love of God and the love of self thing, but what we don't get is love neighbor. So Jesus tells us to do that because it is the sum of God's laws. And Paul agrees. As Paul put it in this morning's lesson, owe no one anything except to love one another. For the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. The commandments: you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and any other commandment are summed up in this word: love your neighbor as yourself. And then, as we heard, Paul writes this: love does no wrong to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfilling of the law. And the phrase "no wrong" means what you think it means. It has no wiggle room for claiming you didn't harm them. They were already eating grass and we ignored them or moved them to our own lot. Or more realistically, I was just discriminating against them and calling them names because they're poor, criminals, illegals, homosexuals, or non-Christians, and I was told or read or I heard that is okay. It's not okay. The word translated as wrong in Paul's text from Romans is kakos. It means a bad nature or acts that are troublesome, injurious, pernicious, destructive, baneful. We are to do none of that according to the Bible. None of that. Love, as we have discussed a lot here, means desiring the well-being of others. And we can fuss and parse the words of Paul and Jesus all we like, but literally love your neighbor and do no harm to your neighbor are pretty straightforward commands. There's no wiggle room. We cannot follow Jesus' teaching by making the word love or wrong mean what we want them to mean. Jesus and Paul meant that we are to desire the well-being of everyone and not participate in any way, in any harm to anyone. The bottom line is, it is pseudo-Christianity and disingenuous at best to sum the gospel up, to claim the word of God is something other than loving everyone, like wealth or self more. Jesus Christ is not the way to material wealth. Jesus Christ is the way to everyone getting enough daily bread and good health. And pursuing anything but love as Jesus' way is more than fakery. It's downright sinful because it fails to shoot for the target of love that God has aimed us at and hurts those we do not love while chasing down personal wealth as a purported Christian goal. And this analysis works on the other items I mentioned earlier too. We have to believe this or that or go to hell. Jesus indicates in Matthew 25 that it is those who care for others, those who put love into action for neighbors that inherit the kingdom God has prepared for us. Jesus mentions nothing about the need to have this or to have that Christian belief. The Bible is an inerrant work written by God. Was a notion that didn't even exist until the late 1800s, about 100 years ago. Jesus says nothing about it, and neither do the Gospels. God's goodly created homosexuals being an evil or sin is certainly not something ever stated by Jesus, nor is it otherwise recorded in any of the Gospels. And Jesus does not claim that we are to despise those of other faiths. Indeed, what Jesus and the Old Testament and the New Testament tell us is that we are to love all others. Jesus actually claims that means we are to even love our enemies. Love them, not find reasons to hate or exclude. As Paul said, love does no harm to a neighbor. No harm. Any church practice which is not aimed at the target of love is pseudo-Christianity because it is a practice not founded upon the life, teachings, or actions of Jesus, nor is it aimed toward love. So here's the thing. We're about to have communion. In many churches, the Lord's table has what theologians call fences around it. It is, there are bars to whom is invited and who may partake. In some churches, you have to believe this or that, or be this or that to even have communion. Jesus had and has no such bar to his table or to his community. His meal practice was open to all. It is open to all. This is Jesus' table. And here in this church, Jesus' table remains as Jesus of the Gospels started it. Open as open can be. There are no fences to communion. You're not a member of this church. You are invited and welcome. Poor, rich, sick, healthy, hungry, fed, criminal, law-abiding, stranger, local, old, young, non-Christian, Christian. You are invited and welcome just as you are. Why? Because we take very seriously God's aiming us toward love. We aim toward doing no harm to a neighbor. We aim toward loving God and our neighbors and ourselves. This is no pseudo-Christian table. It is the Lord of inclusive, no strings attached, love's table. In all ways, anywhere, everywhere there is a Lord's table. Jesus meant it to be open to you and to me, to us, to absolutely everyone. God's love has no strings attached, and worship and communion in this sacred and holy place are meant to reflect just that. May our daily living reflect that.